That's our job security as archaeologists, you know, is the knowledge that there's a lot more yet to be learned. Yeah, my name's Dennis Blanton. I've been at JMU since about 2013. I'm Associate Professor of Anthropology here. Our project at the Woodrow Wilson Presidential Library was one that we got into by invitation. The staff there decided that archaeology might be a useful thing for interpretation. It was a happy outcome because, frankly, I was a bit dubious when I first got the invitation. If you go to the site today and you walk around in that backyard, what you see is this fancy kind of formal colonial-style garden that was installed in the 1930s, well after that house was built and well after many people had lived there. So my assumption is maybe that gardening had erased any of the archaeology that they were really interested in. But lo and behold, we discovered there were all kinds of intact deposits there and lots of artifacts. And I designed it really not only to support this organization in a nearby community as a form of outreach, but I also wanted to turn into a training opportunity for our undergraduate students here, particularly those who aspire to be archaeologists. But we had 4 undergraduates out there, one of whom is a senior, so she sort of earned the opportunity to take control of this and supervise it herself. And they did a beautiful job. And the Woodrow Wilson folks are just ecstatic about what we've learned. And so we'll write another report. Really, the students will write another report with recommendations about what new things they can share about the property and what more potential archaeology might have there. In this case, there was a big surprise. We were asked to go there and study the backyard of this building. Mm-hmm. That had served as the residence of Presbyterian ministers and their families. Call it a manse. If you're Presbyterian, that's what you know this house as. And it was occupied, we know, from the late 1840s up until the 1920s. It was used as a manse for the Presbyterian families. And so we fully anticipated finding things that reflected the lives of the people in that building during that time period. And we really didn't expect to find anything that predated the 1840s. There's no historical record that said there was anybody living there. In fact, there was no record that indicated there was even a building there. But suffice it to say, after 4 weeks of excavating in the yard, we've determined that there was this occupation there no one knew about before the manse was built. And it dates from the late 1700s to the very early 1800s, and the nature of the artifacts indicate that it might be the occupation of a slave family. We don't know who those slaves were associated with at this point. It could be one of the local institutions in Stanton, or it could be a plantation or farm, but that's something we're trying to sort out right now. But these local projects, are kind of like these mini laboratories. You don't have to travel to some exotic place to give students good training, and neither do you have to travel to some exotic place to learn important and interesting things. The results from the Woodrow Wilson property are indicative of that. There's plenty there, and what's important is, if we look at historical records, there's a lot about the ministers and their families, but the records and, say, whether it's diaries or newspapers or church records are fairly silent on the story of enslaved people. So they continue to be somewhat anonymous. And archaeology is one of the ways that we can fill out the picture around people that otherwise really have no historical voice. Especially Native American history, there's plenty we don't understand, and it's of the dimmest early periods of history. In the 16th century and the 17th century, when Europeans were first arriving, there's still a lot we don't know now. You know, if you're a kid and you go to school and you got your textbook and you listen to the teacher, you think, you would come to the conclusion that the story's in the bag, right? We know all we need to know. But that really is misleading, to say the least. Lots and lots of buttons. Then we have lots of this pottery of different sorts, which gives us a sense of the lifestyle of the Presbyterians that were there. Here's an oyster shell, which is kind of a surprise. Most people don't think there would be an oyster shell in the backyard of a 19th century house. From the standpoint of the students, when they're on campus, they're kind of working in this vacuum almost. They're not engaging with communities, and so the subject matter can seem highly abstract, and the practical applications of it are hard to convey in a classroom. But projects like this give us that opportunity to get them out there on the ground and interact with these local governments and historic preservation groups and learn that there are consumers out there, really intrigued, important, excited consumers of what they do, who crave this information, and then will take that information and improve unless we get them out there on the ground in front of these consumers of our information. Once they do, it's like it's almost electrifying for the students to see, that there are people out there that genuinely value what they know and what they do, and it gives them inspiration to continue in their training, and it gives them confidence that they have a future as professionals in this field.
The stick back there.
This thing, that's a piece of wire. So we find all kinds of stuff.